real. Hello, welcome to Financially Savvy in 20 minutes. I am so excited to be I'm always excited, I need to come up with a new word, but today our episode is in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and I'm actually here with someone that I met through the We All Grow Summit in 2019. And I wanted to be able to follow up with her and do a one-on-one because everywhere I go, I've been getting so much, I get stopped by these amazing earrings. Actually, I'm wearing some new ones, but these earrings that I just adore. It says Poderosa that I've been wearing at events. And it's for those that they see it, they think, oh my God, that's totally my word. That's what I need. And so when I started, and that's something typically I don't necessarily wear big earrings that'll say a word. And so for me, it's been a style change, which I've loved. But more importantly, it's because it's supporting women like her that are doing amazing things in our community. She'll tell you a little bit more about how she started her pop-ups and what she's been doing for her business. But for Financially Savvy in 20 minutes, I wanted people to understand that it all comes from a starting place. A lot of us will say, we had this conversation earlier, that we don't want to necessarily start a business or start a side hustle because it's like, oh, I don't have my social media stuff together. I don't even know how to do social media. I don't want to do videos. I don't want to be in front of the camera. Or it's difficult to even figure out how you want to display it. We were just talking about how my nails are never done because they're gone within a day, So it's like, how would I display something as far as earrings? But as you can see, I'm wearing some of her fabulous ones, Poderosa as well. And she has all these amazing empowering words for women in Spanish, which is so cool. And I think being able to highlight people that are in very big communities that are Latin-based, that are Latinx-based. San Francisco is one of them. We're actually in an area, and today we're filming, if you're watching this on YouTube, not through iTunes, is from Calle 24,
yeah,
right?
This is Calle 24 organization. So what they do is they preserve the integrity of what is known as a cultural district, the Latino cultural district here in San Francisco. I actually grew up in the neighborhood about a block away, but as what's happening with many neighborhoods, there's a lot of gentrification, and so we experience that here in this particular neighborhood that is a Latino cultural district, and so that's what this organization does, is preserve the culture. And so we have some really fabulous events that they take care of and they do every year.
And Tanya, if you could tell us a little bit more about, because obviously there's organizations like this that are 501c3s, that are nonprofits that are creating real change. And I just found out they're also fiscally sponsored by the city, which is, wow, unique and incredible. Mm-hmm. You created not only a safe space, but a creative space during your pop-ups. What was your first one like for someone that's watching this or listening to thinking, I need to do a pop-up, but I'm too afraid? What are the doubts that you had to overcome, and how did that go for you, and do you do those again?
Yeah, thank you. So my first pop-up was nerve-wracking, as you can imagine, because I think with any event, you're scared whether people are going to show up, right? So, I mean, all I know is I just put my 200%. I was flyering everywhere. I was going out every night. I was going to different events. The old saying of you're going to get what you put in is so true. So my first pop-up happened to be very successful. We had over 100 people show up, and I think it really had to be because I put in the work. I flyered everywhere. I told everybody about it. I put it on Facebook, on Instagram, on social media, and I think that helped a lot. And so it was a successful pop-up.
Awesome. And to get 100 people at your first one is a big deal.
It's a big deal, yeah.
I mean, I don't sell products the same in that sense where I would have a pop-up, but I've done presentations and workshops, and I remember starting out, there was some workshops that I could remember to the team be like, 8 people showed up that paid, or even if they were free too, it was like, okay, there's less than 10 people, but you still, for me, I was like, I still have to give it my all and act like there's 1,000 people in the audience, because now it is at that point where I think that's important for people to understand. Pop-ups don't necessarily like have 1,000 people showing up right away. It's like, if you're lucky enough, maybe some of your friends and family show up to support, but ideally it's people that want to come and shop. So thanks for sharing that, because I know there's people that are afraid to do it, and sometimes we compare ourselves with other entrepreneurs, with other people that are creating artwork, and say, I don't have that following, or especially on social media. Let's be real with that. People are like, oh, I don't have 100,000 followers. It's like, well, sometimes I'm like, I know people have a lot of followers that have no money. And that's the complete opposite. So I think it's really important for people to just kind of have a clear sense of what they have, right? So one of the questions I want to ask you, because this is one of the questions I always ask, is do you remember the first time that you got paid, whether this was didn't have to be your 9 to 5, maybe it was your side hustle that made you think differently about working for someone else, that possibly it was more importantly for you to be like, oh, I could make some more money on my side. What was that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it kind of leads into why I do what I do now. So I've been working since I was 16 years old, and my first job was as a janitor. My mom is a janitor, my stepdad is a janitor, they're part of a union. So here in San Francisco, janitorial work, we get paid pretty well. At the time for a 16-year-old was $16 an hour.
Wow.
Now starting pay is $18 an hour, so that was really good.
Especially in San Francisco, you need it.
Yeah, it's a very expensive city. So that was my very first job. When it comes to money, we don't like to talk about it, and I know that in my household we did not talk about money, so nobody showed me how to save. Nobody showed me or talked to me about money. So one of those things where I really had to learn in my late 20s probably, and learning all these different ways to save money and be better with your money, it really for me didn't start to happen until my 30s.
Wow.
I'm a case manager by day, so I work with a lot of clients.
Awesome.
One of the things that I did in my 20s that, again, I always tell people, find what works best for you.
Yeah.
For me in my 20s at the time, it wasn't keeping my money in the bank. I don't know why, it just wasn't.
I hear this often, and I wanted to say, maybe it is a cultural thing, because I hear people say often, oh, I have money in my wallet, I need to burn it. And it's like, I need to get rid of it. And it's kind of that, maybe the mentality that we're taught. Yeah, okay.
It's that, because even though it's in the bank, I still have an ATM debit card that allows me to spend. So for me in my 20s, for me not to spend the money, I kept it at home.
Yes.
And I kept it in the drawer or wherever. But it was because I felt at the time that if I had it in the bank with my ATM, it was easy for me to spend it.
Yes.
Whereas if it's at home, you sometimes forget where it is, which is a good thing.
Yes.
And also, for some reason, how can I explain it? Because there is something magical about seeing your money and counting it and knowing that every time you add some money to it, it gets bigger and the amount gets bigger.
Yes.
Whereas with the bank, you see the number, but it's
sometimes it doesn't quite
a visual thing.
Yeah, I think it's something with the virtual. That's what we live in right now. It's like I start to see that more people spend more because everything's virtual instead of letting go of the cash, which the tangible part is so much difficult to depart from.
It is.
But I think it's something that we see that can be that difference. And there's a book, I think it was by Luis Barajas, that was talking about Latinos and their money, and he's like, everyone has that grandma, if it's not you, but it's your grandma that has the money hide under the mattress. And I totally understand that. I had my grandma who used to hide her jewelry in talcos, the baby powder, and the first time I was grabbing a random jar, and I'm like, why do you have your gold rings in this? And she's like, oh, because it gets stolen. And it's like, okay, instead of having it in a safe or things like that you start to figure out. So I think this is a kind of a good segue of when you are starting, now that you have your side hustle as well, your business that you're growing, she's getting a lot of traction. I'm based in LA, she's in San Francisco, and when I go places, people are like, oh yeah, I just bought her earrings, I just got them, and I'm like, this is amazing to see that you're in multiple states, and I think for a lot of people when they're starting out, they're like, I'm just happy if one person buys my product, right?
Yeah.
And now being able to track it and figuring out how much more, we were discussing a little bit, I think for a lot of people is, not only how do we make our money stretch, but how do we importantly figure out, okay, what is our inventory going to look like? Starting out, I know a lot of people say, oh, I could only purchase when I get an actual order. They'll get maybe a bulk of something, but when they get the order. Have you done any tricks in the past, or even now that you're just like, okay, this is how I'm going to make more money if I purchase something?
Great question. So here's the thing too, because every business owner, the reasons they go into business are very different. So I share, and I'm very transparent about the fact that when I vend, the money that I make from vending helps me pay for things like my son taking a soccer class or extracurricular activities. So for me, it's been interesting because I started out with investing $300